Hi, I'm Sherry Damaris, and welcome to Macro Magic. I have with me Dr. Neal Barnard, the president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. He's authored 20 books and a lot of scientific research for lay people and the medical field. He leads programs for preventative medicine, good nutrition, and higher ethical standards in research. And in his latest book, Your Body in Balance, he talks about how hormones hidden in foods influence various cancers, reproductive disorders, thyroid problems, and a host of other physical complaints that you're probably not really aware of. Welcome, Neal.
Thank you, Sherry. It's great to be with you today.
That's so wonderful to see you. And the book is amazing. I read it from cover to cover, and I was so impressed that not only did you cover every, reproductive problem and how food and diet relates to that, but also you dipped a little bit into diabetes, and then you talked about how to initially start a plant-based diet, which helps with all these disorders. And even talked about chemicals on paper and chemicals in our environment that can influence hormones. So give us an idea for our viewers, what is a hormone and why should we be concerned with our diets in relationship to hormones?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Sherry. Hormones are messengers. They're in our body, they're created in one part of the body, and they travel through the bloodstream to other parts of the body where they give them instructions. And up until now, most people have ignored all of that. We figure, how do foods affect my health? If I eat too many calories, I'll gain weight, or maybe my blood sugar will rise, I'll get diabetes, or my cholesterol will go up. And people haven't gone much further than that. But hormones dictate every aspect of your health. And if you learn how foods affect your hormones, you have power that you never had before, and you can bring your health to a completely different level. For example, your thyroid gland is this little quiet organ at the base of your neck, shaped like a little butterfly, and it creates thyroid hormone that gives all of your cells energy. And if it's not working right, you feel crummy, you wake up in the morning with no energy, you stand on the scale, you gain another pound. All of these vague symptoms are a thyroid gland that's just not making enough of that hormone. Well, that often relates to what you had for breakfast or lunch or dinner, and we can change that. But the point is this: if you don't know how to manage your hormones, or worse, if you're eating things that are interfering with healthy hormones, your health is just not going to thrive. But once you know how the system works, whether it's thyroid hormone, insulin that controls your blood sugar levels, the sex hormones that affect not just reproduction, but also cancers, hot flashes, all of these things. Once you know how the system works, you've got power that you never had before. And it starts with understanding the hormones and how you can change it. And the beauty of all this is, it is not rocket science. It's relatively easy to do, but most people kind of neglect it.
That's incredible. And so many people, I know when I do macrobiotic cooking for people, they're concerned about their thyroid, they're concerned about their moods, they're concerned about, being eventually developing cancer. And to have that key or that understanding of how, it's fueled by hormones, which are fueled by the foods we choose, is just groundbreaking.
Yes, well, let me give you just maybe a simple example. Let's say, for example, that you're feeling a bit sluggish. Your thyroid is low, and you think, gee, what is it? You go to the doctor, and the doctor says your thyroid really is low. We need to give you a prescription. Okay. Now I'm going to be replacing my thyroid hormone. How long will I be on this medicine? For the rest of your life. Okay, and you take it, and it helps sort of, but you never really feel like yourself. And for the rest of your life, you're not really solving the problem. Okay, back up. What we've discovered is a couple of things, really two super simple quick fixes with regard to the thyroid gland. Your thyroid gland is cranking out thyroid hormone ordinarily. But one simple thing, you need iodine to make thyroid hormone. Iodine is in seaweed, sea vegetables, like the wakame in your miso soup or the nori that you might wrap a sushi roll in. They are loaded with iodine. But so many people are from communities where seaweed is just not our thing. And so we don't get iodine from that source. In 1924, the Morton Salt Company put iodine in salt. And so everyone was getting iodine from that source, and people had pretty healthy thyroids as a result. Until now, in modern days, we don't have that kind of salt. We'll have sea salt or Himalayan salt or kosher salt. And so we're missing iodine. So you go to the doctor, and your doctor says you're in trouble. You're just not making thyroid hormone. I don't know what it is. If they think a little bit more, they might think, put the iodine back in your diet, and your thyroid's going to work well. Okay, that's step one. Very, very super easy to do. And you can do it with iodized salt. You can do it with seaweed. You can frankly do it with thyroid, iodine supplements if you want. They're at health food stores. But the second thing is this. Many people are eating foods that trigger their body to make antibodies to the thyroid. Dairy products, prime offender. If you look at people who are hypothyroid, the people at the highest risk of having their thyroid gland malfunction are vegetarians who are consuming a lot of dairy, cheese, milk. For hyperthyroidism, it's people who consume a lot of milk and a lot of meat. What seems to be happening is your body reacts to the proteins in those foods by making antibodies to attack those proteins. Those antibodies end up attacking your thyroid gland. So can you get the meat and milk out of your diet? Easily. Can you bring in the iodine? Easily. But you'll never do any of these things until you know the rules of the game.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating because you use that rule of thumb with all the other reproductive disorders that I mentioned. So looking at body fat and diet choices, usually, the heavier you are and the more sad diet you're eating, the more at risk you are for things like prostate cancer, breast cancer, menopausal symptoms, premenstrual problems. I think it all goes hand in hand. It's basically, pretty much you're in a good ballpark if you switch over to a plant-based diet and get plenty of exercise and get outdoors.
Yes, that's right. And with regard to carrying extra body fat, some people imagine that fat cells are just sort of innocuous bags of calories, but they're not. If you have extra body fat, every fat cell is actually a factory that makes estrogens. Now, people don't think about this. Let's say a man gains some weight. His body fat takes his testosterone, the male hormone, goes into one of his fat cells, and out from the cell comes estrogens. The testosterone is converted to estradiol. And this happened in a woman's body too. What does that mean? For the man, he's going to be at higher risk of gynecomastia, that's breast development, higher risk of other health problems. He'll have more fertility issues as a result, probably as well. For women, the biggest concern of overweight is after the age of menopause, the risk of breast cancer just goes way, way up with body weight. And people unfortunately get tortured by fad diets, go to a keto diet to lose weight, or go do South Beach or this or that, the other thing. Don't do any of that stuff. Instead, eat vegetables and fruits and whole grains and beans. Set aside the meats and the dairy and the eggs and the greasy stuff. And when you do that, your weight takes care of itself. You start losing weight in a healthy, natural way. It helps your metabolism actually improve and helps your hormones get back into balance.
So not only the hormone, not only the extra fat, body fat, which is, messing up your system in terms of the hormone production, but also the hormones in the actual dairy food and the actual meat that we're giving these animals before they're slaughtered or before they produce the milk.
If you ever want to get completely grossed out, just go visit a dairy farm, one of these dairy farms. Every single year, every dairy cow on every dairy farm goes through this procedure where some underpaid farmhand takes a glove and he puts it on his left arm all the way up to his shoulder, and he sticks his left hand, forgive me this from the Sherry, but people ought to know. He sticks his left hand into the rectum of the cow, all the way up to his elbow. He's got his arm in her rectum, and through the rectal wall, you can feel the uterus, and you grab a hold of it. And then with his right arm, he jams what looks like a knitting needle through her cervix and inserts semen into the cow to impregnate her. And she is not a volunteer, but she's not going to object because she's chained by the neck, and she will be pregnant on that day. Now, she's going to be pregnant for about 9 months, similar to a human, and after 9 months, she'll give birth. She's milked during that time also. So the fact that she got impregnated doesn't mean they stop milking her. They keep milking her that day, the next day, the next day, the next day, the next day, because she's been impregnated every single year. And if you're not pregnant and you don't give birth, you don't create milk. So dairies figured they'll just keep them pregnant as much as they can. And a pregnant cow makes estrogen, and the estrogen gets in the milk. So it's only a trace. It's not a lot. But it is enough to affect a man's fertility. Men who consume the most cheese, for example, they're getting hormones in the cheese. And that affects their sperm count, their sperm morphology, meaning the shape, motility, meaning do the sperm swim straight. All these things are affected by the hormones. And for the women, the Adventist Health Study just came out with shocking new information looking at milk intake and breast cancer risk, and it goes right up with it. So you don't need to be swallowing estrogens at all, but you are with every glass of milk, with every slice of cheese, with every yogurt, because it came from a cow who was pregnant.
And also, in the book, you talked about prostate cancer and how that's so directly related to drinking milk. And
yes, this comes from, frankly, decades of research. But some of the best studies come out of Harvard. The Physicians' Health Study showed that men drinking the most milk had about a 34% higher risk of prostate cancer. And then the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, also done at Harvard, showed about a 60% increased risk with the big dairy consumers. And what we think is that it's a kind of a hormone haywire caused by consuming dairy. In this case, probably not from the estrogens, but probably because of a compound called IGF-1. When you drink milk, your body responds like the way a calf responds to the milk. Yeah, your body makes more of what's called insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1. It's a big stimulus for both breast cancer cell growth and prostate cancer cell growth.
That's so fascinating, Neal. We're going to take a break and show your commercial, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about your book and about all these diseases and how we can remedy them with simple plant-based diet.
Some of the most troubling health problems have a surprising solution. Weight gain, infertility, diabetes, thyroid disorders, and many other health issues are related to the foods we eat. And in many of these cases, foods are changing our hormones, making us feel great or terrible, vigorous or lethargic, pain-free or miserable. And the key is this: we can take charge of our hormones and the problems they cause by the food choices we make every day.
I didn't make the connection between diet and health until I was 27 and got very ill. I had incredible pain. I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis and ovarian cysts and uterine cysts. They felt very strongly that I needed a hysterectomy because I was too high risk for endometrial cancer. After I made the change to a whole food plant-based diet, I felt incredible. I lost 55 pounds. I had more energy. I started to get new hair growth at 27, which is incredible. My cholesterol came down to a healthy level. My blood pressure came down. Everything changed. It's like I was walking around sick and I didn't even know it because you get so used to it. Hi, I'm Catherine. I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis and many infertility problems, but today I have 3 beautiful children.
My name is Michael Cowan. I'm a neurosurgeon in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I've had hypothyroidism for about 4 or 5 years. I decided to make some dietary changes in an effort to treat this because it was recommended at that time that I start medication. Within 2 weeks of starting a whole food plant-based diet, I noticed significant changes in my energy level. Within a month or two after that, felt like I'd never felt before.
Hi, my name is Wendy. I suffered from hyperthyroidism unknowingly for many years. I discovered a plant-based diet, and within 6 weeks, my blood work and my thyroid numbers were back to normal.
Hi, I'm Allison. I struggled with PCOS and infertility for years. Then I switched to a plant-based diet, and I now have a beautiful 3-year-old girl.
Our hormones direct how our bodies work. They turn our metabolism up or down. They alter our moods. They control reproductive function. They can even affect how we store body fat. And some of the most serious problems we face, obesity, diabetes, even some types of cancer, are related to foods that are causing our hormones to go haywire. Fortunately, simple diet changes can help. My goal is to give new hope to people who are struggling with health issues, to give you the practical tips and resources to get started, including hormone balancing recipes.
Welcome back. I'm Sherry Damaris, and I'm with Dr. Neal Barnard. We're talking about his latest book, Your Body in Balance, and how hormones that are hidden in our foods are affecting us in all sorts of ways. We talked about thyroid issues, weight issues, and we also talked about all sorts of reproductive problems. And I know, Neal, you and I were talking earlier about menopause. So many older women suffer from menopausal symptoms, and I had read in your book, all the different drugs and medications with side effects that often happen. Usually their only alternative. So this book is so amazing, and it points to the fact that just developing a plant-based diet, you can clear up your menopausal symptoms.
Yes, and maybe there are a few things that we might add to it as well. It's been an interesting discussion. So in the United States, so many women really struggle with hot flashes, and they come out of the blue, and you feel like you're about to spontaneously combust. And then after a couple of minutes, it stops, and then you get chills, and it all comes back over and over again, and you can be miserable, especially if they're hitting you throughout the night. So you just never get a good night's sleep. But a researcher named Margaret Locke, back a couple of decades ago, started surveying women in several Japanese cities. And she found that they did not report hot flashes very commonly. It was really rare. And at first the thought was, well, they're reticent to talk about health. They don't want to mention something intimate like a hot flash. That's the way Japanese women are. But that wasn't it. The researchers really dug in depth to try to find what symptoms did women have. And they didn't really start developing hot flashes very much until the diet started to westernize. Starting a little bit in the 80s and the 90s, and especially in the 2000s, the fast food chains started spreading cheese and meat into the Japanese diet. Diabetes went up, breast cancer went up, heart disease went up, obesity went up, and hot flashes started to come in, and depression seemed to come in along. All of these things were more common than they had been before westernization. So researchers then started looking at other countries, noticing a similar trend, that when the diet was more plant-based, I'm talking about, say, in China or other Asian countries, or even in, say, the Yucatan Peninsula among Mayan women in Mexico's sort of eastern coast. It was a diet based on beans, plant-based foods, maybe a little animal products, but really not much. And there really wasn't a lot of hot flashes. So all of this led to a whole bunch of experiments. And two themes have emerged from this. Number one, if you're on a plant-based diet, a healthy low-fat diet based on plants, it looks like hot flashes are less likely to begin. However, if you got hot flashes, researchers took a leaf out of the Japanese tradition and started testing soy products, finding that not everybody was affected, but if you had soy, either soy extracts or foods made from soy, maybe about 40% of women seemed to benefit. So a number of studies have been done testing out this possibility. And it does look like quite a number of women benefit from that. So our prescription is don't take the hormones. At least don't take the hormones that they want you to swallow. And instead, use a plant-based diet. Do try the soybean cure and see if it works for you.
And it's amazing in your book that you go into soy and support soy, because so many clients I have that come to me in starting the diet talk about breast cancer and their fear of soy. And I always reassure them, like miso's fermented soy, good quality tofu, all great products for your hormones. Not, it's not going to make your breast cancer worse.
Well, it's precisely the opposite. Soybeans do not promote breast cancer. This is sort of an internet myth that kind of won't go away, but researchers have had more than enough time to study this. And just to be clear, soybeans contain what are called isoflavones. Those isoflavones will attach to estrogen receptors on breast cells. That worried everyone when that discovery was made a number of years ago. They thought, well, they're going to have an estrogenic effect that could mean that breast cells could become cancerous and that they would then grow and spread. And the other fear was that a woman who had had breast cancer already, the soy would make it more likely to propagate and kill her. So researchers have studied this. And we have many, many studies, and the results are extremely consistent, and they show two things. Number one, women who consume the most soy have about 30% lower risk of breast cancer compared to women who avoid soy. And I have to say, Sherry, it doesn't really matter if they're fermented or unfermented. A glass of soy milk or some tofu, these are non-fermented foods. They seem to have the same breast cancer preventive effect as something that is fermented, like tempeh or miso. And then secondly, for women who had breast cancer in the past, those women consuming the most soy had, again, about a 30% reduction in the likelihood that the cancer would ever return or kill them. So soy products were clearly beneficial. So you go back to the lab and you think, well, wait a minute. If the soybean has an isoflavones and they're attaching to the breast cell, why is this good? How can this be helping? And the reason is you have alpha receptors and beta receptors on breast cells. The alpha receptor, let me use an automotive analogy, if you don't mind. It's sort of the gas pedal. The alpha receptor encourages cancer cells to grow, if I can put it that way. The beta receptor, which is where soy attaches, is the brake. It slows down this process that could lead to cancer. So the more soy in your diet, frankly, the better. Now, you don't have to have it. It's totally optional. But soy reduces the risk of developing cancer. It reduces the risk of dying of your cancer for women who had it. Plus, it's dramatically better than what you were going to eat otherwise. If you were going to have a veggie, like a hamburger, and you have instead a veggie burger made from soy, that's a really good move. If you're having soy milk instead of cow's milk, there's no estrogen in soy milk. There's plenty of estrogen in cow's milk.
So yeah, it gives you hope in terms of just switching over a little bit, changing your diet, and you're in a good ballpark. Because I know from your previous books, all the phytoestrogen are the great benefits of cruciferous vegetables, and they're all anti-cancer elements in these vegetables that we're eating, in addition to the soy products.
And benefits for men too. Men consuming the most soy have about 30% less risk of prostate cancer. And soy is not feminizing at all. It's not the cause of gynecomastia or something like that.
Yeah, that's important for people to know too. You're
Right.
not a man if you don't drink milk. So we have some beautiful photos of some of the dishes. You offer recipes in the back of the book. Some brown rice sushi, some tacos, beautiful breakfast fiatas, some pizza, and miso soup, of course. And those recipes you can find in the very back of your book. Most of your books have great recipes in the back. And here's a cover of your book, Your Body in Balance. And you can get it on Amazon, which is nice. And you've done so many YouTube great videos. So we just have you public speaking What I love about you most, Neal, is your ability to take these medical terms and sort of dummy them down so the public can understand them, and they're not, they're not totally sidetracked by what their doctor's trying to explain to them. They understand the terminology, they understand the mechanisms, and how nutrition is actually working in the body. And we want to talk a little bit about erectile dysfunction, because I know that's another hot topic that many people don't know that diet can play a great part in, remediating that.
It's really the whole thing. So many people imagine that erectile dysfunction is caused by performance anxiety or just getting older or something like that. Sexual function in a man is really a hydraulic thing. You need blood flow. And if a man has plenty of blood flow to his private parts, all the mechanisms work just fine. But when Hank gets to be a little older, he's got narrowed arteries. He's got narrowed arteries in his heart, narrowed arteries in his brain, and he's got narrowed arteries to his private parts. And that just means he's not getting enough blood flow to perform sexually. So what's the answer? Well, Dean Ornish back in 1990 showed that a healthy plant-based diet, plus exercise, plus throwing away the cigarettes and handling stress, you put that together and the arteries start opening up again. And this will not be on the test, Jerry, but the flow through any vessel is proportional to the fourth power of its radius. What that means is a tiny little opening of that. You went vegan. You've been vegan now for just 2 months, 3 months, but the arteries are starting to open up. That leads to a huge increase in flow. And so when we use vegan diets, low-fat vegan diets, no animal products at all, in men with erectile dysfunction, after a couple, 3 months, they are surprised. They'll come into our center, I'm young again. In addition to everything else, they're losing weight and their diabetes is getting better, but their sexual performance is improved.
Yeah, and you also mentioned for teenagers, acne problems, premenstrual problems, fibroids, endometriosis, all cleared up with a plant-based diet. Unfortunately, we can't go into every single one of them, but I encourage viewers to buy the book, because not only does it talk about all these disorders as well as diabetes, it goes into how to begin a plant-based diet step by step, some great recipes, as well as looking at some of the products you're using in terms of chemicals, and them, even printed receipts affecting your hormone levels, which I was really surprised about.
Well, our goal is to clean up our diet, get away from the things that are hurting us. And some of the things that are hurting us were actually never in the food at all. They were in the lining of the can or something else, or on a pesticide that was used. So I thought, well, people need a quick and simple guide to how to take care of themselves. So anyway, if people pick up Your Body in Balance, I hope they benefit from it. But to tell you the truth, Sherry, I've got a bigger goal, and that is to recognize that the people who need the information most, frankly, including the information in every program you have ever done, Sherry. You have life-saving information, you have life-changing information, but the people who need it the most have not seen your program. So, and they haven't read my book. They are, because they're 12 years old, and they're in school eating pepperoni pizza and eating meat tacos, and they don't know about this information. So my most urgent appeal is for people who have this information to share it, and to share it especially with families where they have children who, frankly, their life is in front of them. And one trajectory can bring them menstrual pain, fertility issues, excess weight, thyroid problems, diabetes, cancer, and a foreshortened life. The other path can lead them to really feeling well and to be able to keep their families together and intact in the very best of health. And to the extent that we have sort of an owner's manual for how to control our hormones, that's a big part of keeping our family free from harm.
Thank you so much, Neal. I so appreciate all your hard work. It means so much to the world, especially right now during our crisis in the pandemic. And we hope to see you again on Macro Magic.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks.